you kind of wrote about your injury, and I wanted to check
Yep.
in with you. And while I was checking in with you, it made sense for me to ask if you would do this. So yeah, I can't wait to jump in. Um, where are you? Who are you? Tell us all the things. Do you have a family? Do you have a job? Let's
Okay,
do it.
we'll start with the first one. So I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah, right now.
Cool.
I've lived here for about 2.5 years. I moved here from Southern California. I'm originally from Jersey. I'm still a Jersey girl at heart. I always will be. I will try not to drop any F-bombs in this interview. It's going to be hard for me. But yeah, so I'm in Salt Lake now, but I moved here because I bought a plot of land in Park City and I am building a house there. So I'm planning, the house should be done this summer, and then I'm planning to just settle in Park City full time.
That sounds awesome. Wow, it's
Yeah.
beautiful. I'm going skiing there in March. I can't wait. So
Well,
maybe
then we'll have to get together. I mean, my house won't be ready, but I'll be here, so we will definitely do a little Team Wilpers meetup.
oh, sounds
Yeah,
good. It's on.
it's my happy place. It's my happy place. So yeah, so I'm in Salt Lake right now. I'm enjoying being downtown in a metro area, which is it was a nice transition for me to come here first, coming from LA and New York to not go directly to living in the mountains. Although at this point, I'm really itching to just get in the mountains and out of the city. So I'm looking forward to it. And there will not be any skiing on my agenda this winter because of my injury, but hopefully next year I'll get back
Which,
to the snowshoeing and the cross country. And you and I briefly spoke earlier before we jumped on the recorded part of this, but at our age, I'm not really into the downhill skiing or the snowboarding anymore. That's an injury waiting to happen, and I've already had too many injuries. So I stick with
right.
my cross country and my snowshoeing to be safe. So yeah, I'm in Salt Lake. I do not have a family unless you consider two very needy rescue cats family, which I personally do. But
Sure.
no
Counts.
no spouse, no kids, and my siblings are on the other side of the country. So I am out here by myself, but very fortunate to have a really solid group of friends. So they're pretty much my family. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Um,
amazing. And we
yeah.
are your family. The Team
Yes.
Wilpers
Yes.
community
The
is your
Team
family
Wilpers
for sure.
community, the Peloton community. Yeah, it's kind of amazing the way I've grown my family so much through getting a bike that goes nowhere during lockdown. So yeah, it's pretty fantastic.
Do you ride outside at all or no?
I was a road cyclist for a very long time. I got into cycling when this is a cool story actually. When I was in my 20s living in New York City after college, I was working in healthcare advertising and PR. And the company that I worked for, one of our clients was doing a cancer awareness program, and Lance Armstrong was our spokesperson. And I got to prep him for satellite interviews for all of the PR that he was doing for this campaign. And
Oh,
I
that's
was
awesome.
really into indoor spin at the time, but I hadn't really been riding outside. And after I met him, I was inspired to get a bike and start training to ride outside. And I did, back then there was a company called Pallotta Teamworks, which is no longer in existence, but they were a nonprofit. They used to do the original AIDS rides. And I did the AIDS ride from Boston to New York and a bunch of their charity rides. I did the 5 borough bike tour in New York. And then I was training for the Canada to New York AIDS ride with them.
Wow.
And
Okay.
I ended up getting really sick. And it turned out I had an undiagnosed thyroid condition, but I ended up with chronic fatigue and I had to sort of drop out of the training. So I never
Wow.
finished that ride, but I stayed with the road riding for a really long time. And it's funny, Matt Wilpers will talk on his ride sometimes about riding up 9W when you go over the George Washington Bridge from New York. And I grew up right off 9W.
Yeah.
So when I was living in New York City and had my bike, I would ride over the bridge and go up 9W, go visit my parents in Jersey, and then keep going on up to Piermont and Bear Mountain and all that stuff. So I loved
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
And then I took it with me to California when I moved there, and then it got stolen. And
Oh no.
after
Oh,
that,
bike.
I was sort of like, I'll get another bike eventually, and then life got in the way, and I never really had the time to devote to all of those, century rides on the weekends and things like that. And I didn't replace it. It happened. I think it was stolen in 2017 or 2018. And I never got back on the road after that. But now that I am in Utah, one of the very first things that I'm going to do once I'm settled in Park City is get a new bike and start riding outside again.
Yeah, we need to get you a gravel bike for Utah, probably gravel bike or mountain bike, all the
I know.
trails, put you on the dirt.
Gravel bikes are big here. I have vertigo, so mountain biking scares the
Okay.
bejesus out of me because the changes in the light and your vision and all of the obstructions along the way really disorient me. So I don't know that mountain biking is my thing, but I could definitely do some gravel trails for sure. So yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, I was on the AIDS ride. I'm trying to think of which year. I think it was the second one, the Boston to New York AIDS
So
ride.
mine was 1999.
I'd have to think really hard before I could come up with a year, but it was the second time they did it.
Okay.
It
All
was
I
the
remember is
because
the
the
shirt. I
first
still have the shirt, and it was Kelly green
yes,
with white writing on it. So we might have done it the same year. That would be
we might have
a
done
pretty
the
interesting
same one.
coincidence.
I
Yeah.
kind of think that it was earlier than that.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure I was 95, 96,
Okay. Okay.
97, something like that. By 99, I think just the trying to place it together. I think I was earlier than that. I was not a cyclist at that point yet, though. So that was kind of something. I had just gotten a mountain bike, and a friend of mine from college said, "Hey, why don't we do this?" And so, so without much training, and certainly
Right.
without like years of training like I've had now, I went and did it, and that was quite an experience to camp. It was 4 days, so the original one was 3 days, 100 miles for 3 days, and
Yep, that was the one I did. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, that's a hard that's a hard event. Good for you.
It was fun. I actually, and I trained my butt off for it. So I didn't find it to be that challenging because I was ready. I was probably over prepared. I was logging so many miles. It was like every weekend, oh, let's go do another century, just because I wanted to feel like I wasn't going to get dropped to the end of the pack. But it was a really cool experience. And it really did, just even the camaraderie that came along with finding my few people that I could do the regular training with on the weekends really brought something special to my life.
Yeah, that's
And
cool.
I don't know that I had had that again until I found, Peloton and Power Zone Pack and Team Wilpers and all that. So,
Good segue. How did you find
yeah.
Peloton and Power
So
Zone Pack and
I obviously, like many people, didn't get my Peloton until lockdown. At the time I was doing Orange Theory like 7 days a week and I was running outside and doing all the things. And when lockdown hit and Orange Theory closed, I started to just run every day. And my joints and my spine said, you cannot do this anymore. Absolutely not. I was in pain all the time. And I also do a lot of yoga. I've been practicing yoga for 25 plus years. So I was really just doing yoga flows and running every day, but I really couldn't handle the pounding on the pavement and the concrete anymore. And I said,
we're
it's time
all
to,
ex-runners.
yeah, so time to bite the bullet. And I did. And, I couldn't envision that it would have turned out to be what it became for me. I thought it was going to sort of be this temporary fix where, oh, who knows how long we're going to be stuck at home. But while we're here, sure, I'll ride this bike a couple days a week. And I
Right,
found myself wanting to spend more time on the Peloton as opposed to wanting to be outside running all the time. And I think it was a friend of mine who's actually here in Salt Lake, but at the time I lived in LA, who told me, you have to check out this Power Zone training. She said, I know you're a data geek. I know you're so into the metrics and I know you're into performance and I think you're going to love it. The first ride that I took was, I think, a Hidden Hills with Robin Arzon because she had told me about Robin. And my second ride ever was Matt's Alpe d'Huez climb.
nice,
And
nice.
I loved his coaching. I mean, when I go into something, I go all in. I'm like, let's just do this. Like, there's no baby steps, which is it's got me into trouble. We can talk about that a little bit, but hence
Uh-oh.
my injury. But I once I saw Matt's coaching, I said, oh, this is the guy who's the primary Power Zone coach, and this is really cool. I want to check this out. And so I think my second week that I had my bike, I took my FTP, and they were just starting a new challenge right then. I think the Power Zone Pack was doing like the Major League Zones challenge or something like that. And I jumped right in and I never looked back. I didn't miss a challenge from then until now. I was a team lead for like 10 or 11 straight challenges. I finally had to step back from that a couple challenges ago because I was super burnt out on constantly being on everybody's back to get rides done. But,
Yeah,
I could not get over how tight knit the community became. And I think a lot of that probably had to do with the fact that we were all trapped in our homes and looking for some sort of outlet. And this became our shared outlet. So I think that helped bond everybody. But for me, having been an athlete my whole life, I was a competitive gymnast when I was a kid. I was competitive in team sports my whole life. So finding a community where people, especially with Power Zone training, took the metrics and the performance as seriously as I did, that saved me.
yeah,
That
it's
saved me for
amazing.
sure.
It's just
Yeah.
still amazing to me that we really Matt has brought power training to the general population. When I first got a power
Agreed.
meter, they were prohibitively priced, and you had to buy a hub and have a wheel built around it, and then you had a wires going up to your handlebar, and the computer was there on your handlebar, but with wires and everything. Then you had to take it off and you had to hook it to your computer,
Right.
old school. but just the
Upload the
price of
data.
it,
Yep.
and there wasn't a lot of analytics going on with it yet, but there was a little bit, enough to make it interesting to me, and so I really got into it when it was really just getting started for competitive cyclists, and
Right.
so then coaching and persuading my athletes on the team that I coached to get power meters on their bike, and we weren't indoors yet. We weren't training with power indoors. We were doing it in Central Park, and
Yep.
that was our trainer. But so my story is that Matt liked what we were doing so much that he quit his job and became a coach, and took what we were doing and took it to a whole nother level. So bringing power zone training to the general population, I
I
give him
love
full
that.
credit. It's been amazing.
I love that. It's amazing to me that he's sort of, he's become such a well-known name because so many people now have experienced his coaching via the Peloton platform and Team Wilpers and all of it. It's interesting. I had actually thought about when I still had my road bike, I had thought about getting an indoor trainer and a power meter just to be
Yeah,
able to track those metrics. And then I got the Peloton. I had an OG bike when I first got it though, and there was something wrong with the sensor. So my original metrics were juiced. And I
yeah.
was aware of it. I was like, there is no way that this is my power to weight ratio. I was like, like my first 3 months, I think, my power to weight ratio was like 3.8 or something. And I was like, yeah, this is not right.
Ooh,
So
yeah.
when
You and your
when they,
buddy Lance Armstrong have the
right,
same power to weight
exactly.
ratio.
Exactly.
That's
So
probably
when they did
something
the
wrong,
trade-in
right?
program, I traded up to the Bike Plus, and that was like a major, ego check because it was like, okay, my FTP just plummeted 79 watts. That sounds about right. So,
That's so hard. Oh
yeah,
man,
it
I've
was,
had to counsel people through that transition. No, you didn't lose fitness. You're
yeah.
just reading real numbers now.
And
You
I actually,
nothing
that's what I
changed.
wanted because I sort of felt like a fraud. I was like, this is definitely not accurate. And I want to know
Okay,
where I am. I want to actually have legitimate data. I'm very big on accuracy. So for me, I was willing to swallow that and
good.
say, okay, now I know where I am. So now I know what I can work toward. And originally I had kept all of my old PRs thinking, oh, I'll work toward those. But then injury, surgery, all sorts of stuff. And I said, you know what? I'm actually deleting everything because
Yeah,
I don't
good.
want to even focus on it anymore. And I have a tattoo that says, don't look back, you're not going that way.
Oh,
So I was
nice.
sort of like, you know what? I forget about the stuff that's in the past and let's just move forward. So yeah.
So
Yeah.
good, so good. Well, so speaking of forward, what do you have any goals set up? I know you've got some injuries you're dealing with right now, but any goals for 2024? Anything you want to accomplish specifically, either performance or an event?
My first goal is to stay healthy for an entire year. I mean, the moment I hit 50, it feels like the dominoes started falling. There was a cervical spinal fusion, and then there were fractured lumbar vertebrae, and then there was a stress fracture, and now there's a broken metatarsal and a ruptured tendon. And it's like one thing after another. And I'm like, you know what? I would like a year of just actually being able to do the things I love to do without being on crutches, without being on a knee scooter, without being in a brace, whatever. Um, but I do hope that I might actually finally be able to do my first half marathon. Because I had a really serious injury years ago when I was training for my first half, so I never got to do it. So that's sort of sitting in my mind, and I always had dreams of doing a half Ironman. And I know that I would be able to very easily handle the cycling portion of that. I was a strong swimmer when I was younger, but I'm not a big fan of open water swims, so I would sort of have to get past my fear
Okay.
of that to tackle that demon. But right now, I think for me next year, it's really more about getting back on the road, getting a new bike, getting back on the road, finding my people in my community who I can ride with outside, and getting my
Yeah.
feel for that outdoor riding experience again because it's been years. And I'm reminded every time I'm sitting on my bike in my house, as much as I like the convenience of it, how much I love being outside. It's part of why I live in Utah. So it doesn't
Especially
make
in Utah.
sense for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't make sense for me to do all my exercise indoors. So my goal for the year is to finally replace my stolen road bike and start clipping it outside and really getting out there and riding on the road again. And then maybe, doing some scenic rides and potentially at some point doing some more charity rides and the things that I used to do years ago. So
Oh, there's
that's,
so many events out there now too. So many events. So
I
that'll be
know,
fun.
I know. Yeah.
That'll
Got to
be a
find the
lot
time
of
to
fun.
train.
Yeah, well, that's certainly a great goal, but you do have some injuries that you're battling. What's going on right now? What happened most recently?
Okay, so this is kind of embarrassing, and it's also a testament to listening to your body and not being an idiot like I am. In my defense, I do have a neurological condition, so I actually don't process pain properly. I've had this since I was a kid, so I don't. Something that feels like a nagging annoyance to me is excruciating to somebody else. And this is a problem. So I have pushed myself through injuries. You know, we were also told when I was a competitive gymnast as a kid, walk it off, push through the pain, all that. And I think my brain sort of wired differently because of it. So anyway, I was at PSNY to take some classes over a marathon weekend in New York a couple weekends ago. A couple of people that I knew were running the marathon, and a bunch of us decided to go together and spend the weekend, take some classes, cheer everybody on.
Nice.
And I was so excited to finally be able to take TS60 live in the studio with Andy Spear. And we got into the studio, and I had had a stress fracture in August in my left foot that had
Okay.
healed, or so I thought. I had hobbled around for a while. I eventually got in a boot. I was in the boot for about 3.5, 4 weeks. Everything felt good. So I had gotten back to my usual routine for about 2 weeks. Got there, started warming up for TS60, started doing some pogos, started doing some lateral hops from foot to foot, landed on the foot that had the stress fracture and felt a pop and a crack. And I said to
Oh,
myself, I think I either just broke a bone or ruptured a tendon.
oh
But I'm
no,
in the
Marjorie.
studio, and Andy literally comes walking in 30 seconds later as I'm staring at my friends who are there with me, looking at them with this look on my face like I think I just screwed up my foot again. And I don't know if it was the adrenaline or the fact that I am the way I am with not processing pain the way I should, but I was like, well, I'm just going to stay here and do the class anyway because I don't really have another choice. And of course, I was on the mat that's on the screen, like that's on camera. So I was like, well, I actually
Oh
really have to
my
do the
God.
class now because the camera's on me.
So
And
we can pull
I
up the class and watch you working out
you
with a broken
can.
foot?
You can. It was TS60 from 2 weeks ago. Yeah. And it was funny because after class, you know, a friend of mine texted me to say, because she knew about my injury, she said, is your foot okay? She said, it's not like you to modify. And she saw me modifying at the end of class. I was skipping some
Oh,
lunges and just
busted.
doing
Yeah.
stationary squats instead. And I said, girl, you would not believe what I think I did.
Oh
Um, and,
no.
uh, and I saw Andy after class and I went hobbling up to him and I told him that I thought I really screwed up my foot. He said, well, don't do pogos on account of me. And I said, well, it's too late now. You know, the damage is done. So
Yeah, it's
I
already
came back.
broken. That doesn't fix it.
Yeah, I came home the next day and or that night, and I went to the ortho hospital the next day. When I woke up in the morning, I couldn't even put my foot on the ground. And I was texting my friends to
Oh,
see if anyone had any crutches. And I hopped out to my car and hopped to the ortho hospital. And they had looked at the scans and they said, you made a mess. I said,
oh
I had a
no.
feeling. So I'm in a boot. I'm on crutches, no weight bearing I'm a week and a half in. They said at least the first 4 weeks and
Yeah, I was
then
gonna say six
reassess
weeks,
after
4 weeks.
that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
but I'm going back on Monday for them to just rescan to see how the tendon is doing, just to make sure they don't have to do anything surgical. So keep your
Uh,
fingers crossed. So,
all right.
um, yeah, but I'm managing. I'm hobbling around. I've got my crutches. I've got a scooter downstairs so I can still work in the kitchen. And I'm in the gym every day. Focusing on strength training right now. I'm still doing whatever
Crutches
yoga
are
I
good for
can.
upper body strength.
It was
Crutches.
funny, I know, and I'm already strong in my upper body, but everyone was saying to me, they said, "You're going to get even more jacked up top," and I said, "I know, but then I'm going to be so imbalanced if everything on my lower body atrophies." I said, "So I'm trying to focus on still doing leg strength." I mean, the good news is there are machines that you can do. You can do the leg extension and leg curls and things like that with a boot on your foot. So I'm still trying to do some of that in the gym so I don't lose everything. So,
So the personal trainer here would say yes to my clients who are injured. No, come to the gym anyway. We'll find something. There is always
yep.
something you can do. So I'm curious to hear that you believe the same thing. But you were a personal trainer, are a personal trainer
I was years ago, in my 20s and early 30s in Los Angeles.
in Los Angeles. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And I worked for a couple of corporate gyms and then I shifted over to just took my clients private. And I was working out of one of those private studios where you can just pay as you go to bring your own clients in.
Yep.
And I did that for several years and I had some really wonderful and very loyal clients. Interestingly enough, one of them, who I'm still very close with, she's the one who told me to get my Peloton. She's the one who lives here in Salt Lake now. I was
Oh,
her
nice.
trainer back then. She
Yeah.
lived in LA at the time, and then she moved back home. So we're still good friends. But I loved it, but I found myself constantly trying to explain to my clients that no, just because you did 30 minutes on the Stairmaster doesn't mean you can go eat half a cheesecake. And it was always the nutrition piece that was an issue, and I mean, the saying that abs are made in the kitchen and all that kind of stuff, but it really is true that nutrition is so important if you want to achieve your results when it comes to fitness. And so I was so tired of having to try to explain it to people and then not have the certifications, not have the degrees to be able to back up what I was saying. So I went to graduate school and I got my degree in nutritional science. And
Oh, nice.
I went to San Diego State because I was in Southern California at the time, and they have an exercise and nutritional science department. So I could sort of marry the two, and got my master's there, and then went back to LA and was counseling everybody on nutrition. I sort of pulled back from the actual physical training portion of it then and stuck solely with nutritional consulting. And then I found that all of my clients who were asking me about nutrition and advice then wanted to know, well, how do I make this food? And do you have recipes and all that? And so I ended up going to culinary school and getting my culinary degree
That's a
and
really nice
became a chef. So
step.
it
Oh,
was
that's
it was a
amazing.
really cool journey to get me to where I was eventually really destined to be. And honestly, the kitchen is my happiest place, and it's where I am most passionate and most productive. So I love it. And it's really cool to look back at the path and see how I landed where I did. And because of my background, and because I've worked with athletes, and because I've worked with everybody from weekend warriors to people who are going through chemo treatment and, cancer patients, I can basically make good food for anybody who needs it. And so I love being able to do that. I have my clients run the gamut of every aspect of life you can imagine. So it's a
Oh,
lot of fun.
sure. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I can totally imagine a similar experience, although I did not go the food way, even though with the minimal nutrition classes that I took in college, I didn't go any further than that, but would rely on somebody like you instead because nutrition is so important. So not really a specialty in personal training, but just kind of gathered clients and would work on strength, but then really moved on towards the nutrition component and furthered your education and
Yes.
ended up a chef. And you're currently work as a chef. Is that what you do?
I do. I work as a chef. I do dinner parties. I do private meal prep for people who are looking to, improve their diet. And I also do consulting for food companies that need, whether it's recipe development or operations management, because I've owned a couple of food businesses as well. So I've worn a lot of hats. I've done catering. I've done it all. Right now, at this point, because the job is so physical, and because of all these injuries that I've had, I'm trying to pull away from doing a lot of the really heavy lifting day to day when it comes to the labor in the kitchen. So I'm shifting more to the consulting, and I still put nutrition plans together for people when they ask me. I will still do that kind of thing. But recipe development and operations consulting is really more of where I want to stay now, just because it doesn't mean that I have to be throwing around, heavy pots and pans for 15 hours a day. So
That's hard work. That's
it
hard
is.
work. I have
It
friends
is.
who are head chefs and own restaurants in New York City and around, and yeah, that's hard work. So good for you
It's
for
exhausting.
noticing that it's healthier to move away from that.
It is. And the restaurant life is brutal. Just the hours are terrible too. I mean, you never sleep, and you're getting off work at 2 a.m. And when I had a bakery, it was actually the opposite because I was managing the bakery. I had built it from the ground up. I developed all the recipes, and I was doing all the production and all the packaging. And so I was there 7 days a week, and I would get in at like 5:30, 6 a.m. and I'm there all day. And so when I leave at the end of the day, it's physically exhausting anyway, but then I still felt like I needed an outlet. So then it's all right, I'll go run a few miles outside. I'll go do a little yoga. But it was like there was never any time to just sit and be still and breathe. And,
It's hard.
I know Matt always says he never wants to hear the excuse, I'm too old for this, but you do have to make some adjustments to your lifestyle when you hit a certain age. And I feel like in your 50s, it's time to start prioritizing certain things and maybe not necessarily leave it all on the floor in the kitchen at work, but leave time to be able to do the things you love outside of it.
Let's ask Matt what he thinks about it when he's in his 50s.
Exactly, exactly. I know.
uh, where do you start? Nutrition is so vast. There's so much this, that. You've got a client, you've got a cyclist in our community. Where do you start with nutrition? Where does somebody start with they want to tailor from the ground up a nutrition program? Where do we start?
I start with, I give them a very thorough questionnaire where I ask their goals and I ask about their current habits. And my clients, I always ask them to fill out a minimum of 3 days, but usually 5 days, a very complete food journal. And when I say complete, I say, I want to know every sip of water you took. I want to know every random bite you took off your kid's plate in passing. All of those things that people tend to lose sight of. And we have this tendency to sort of forget. I call it food blindness, where you don't remember that you ate something, and you don't account for that when you're trying to put together, a balanced nutritional program. And then I usually say to them, when was the last time you saw your doctor? what were your values like? How's your cholesterol? How's your blood work? Are there any issues I need to know about? And when people really want to get very granular about it, if they're really into the idea of, functional foods and mushroom powders and all of these performance enhancers and, any NSF certified supplements, then I say to them, let's put you in touch with a naturopathic doctor who will run all these panels, and then we can sort of try to pick out what we think is going to be best for your performance to add in addition to a very well balanced diet. Because I feel like a lot of that stuff is coming to the forefront now with the functional foods, especially mushrooms. I mean, and I'm not talking about the psychedelic stuff. I'm talking about the, the reishi and the lion's mane, and all of these mushrooms that you're seeing, like these nootropics and all these products you can buy now. But you have to be careful and make sure that they're actually quality supplements. So I like to make sure that people understand that just because you're eating food that's good for you doesn't mean you're not going to enjoy it. And that's really why I got into doing the food in the first place, because even though I wanted to teach people how to eat healthy meals, I didn't want to suck the joy out of it for them. I didn't want to say, all right, here's a bland piece of, chicken and some steamed broccoli and have a nice day. So,
It's
for me,
not
it's
gonna
about
last, right?
right.
Nobody's gonna
So,
stick with that.
find out what their joys are and find ways to make food for them that is delicious and going to achieve their nutritional goals, where they can still get those flavors, they can still get those textures. But it all starts with finding out what their lifestyle is and what their goals are, and then I just build it from there. I mean, I probably have hundreds of menus, in my
And
database on my
that's what you
computer
need,
that I've
building
developed over
blocks,
the
right?
years.
Building blocks
Yeah,
to develop a nutrition thing. So just like
yeah,
the cycling, so I've got thousands of workouts, and
right,
you put them together in a plan. So you take your menus and you put them together and put it together in a thoughtful plan. And
exactly.
so performance or weight management. So
I am more concerned with performance, but when I say that, I kind of mean performance for life. I don't necessarily mean only for elite athletes. I sort of approach nutrition the same way I approach strength training. I think it should be more functional than anything. I think it should allow you to achieve the things you want to achieve in life. And that doesn't necessarily mean an Ironman and a century ride. It means your day-to-day life. If you're an elite athlete, or you have a big event coming up and you want to fuel yourself for that, I can work on that as well. But most people come to me because they just say, I want to feel better. I feel sluggish. I'm not sleeping well, those kinds of things. My brain is foggy. I'm not losing any weight. I'm not seeing any progress in the gym, those kinds of things. So for the average person, I would say it's really more about focusing on how you can just feel better in your daily life.
I'm
When
so
I was
glad I'm so glad you said that. Like, performance doesn't have to mean Ironman, and doesn't have to mean you're
exactly,
a
yeah,
pro athlete, and neither does coaching or training or anything.
yeah,
Look at what we're doing in this community with, I mean, not many of us are pro athletes in this community, I don't
right.
think. We are regular people and have a lot of things in common, in that we are trying to feel better, and nutrition is a huge component of it. So,
Exactly. Yeah, one of my most recent meal delivery clients, I met him in the gym in my building when he was working out with his trainer, and his trainer, they were having a conversation about food, and he was complaining about how he knew cottage cheese was healthy but he hated it or whatever, and I just was chuckling to myself because I've had so many of these conversations over the years. So I apologized for eavesdropping and then jumped into the conversation, as I like
yeah,
to do. And
yeah.
long story short, he hired me to do his meal prep, and a couple months in, his trainer came to me in the gym one day and he said, Marge, he said, I got to tell you, he said, he suddenly had like I suddenly saw the difference in his
Oh, that's awesome.
performance, in his strength, in his body composition. He said he's finally getting to where I want him to be because he's not ordering DoorDash every night. He's not eating all of this junk food. He's eating, thoughtfully prepared, balanced meals. So yeah, I mean, when I was a trainer, it was the same thing. I wasn't about, let's make you the most jacked person in the gym. It was, what does your daily life look like? Do you have to walk up, 4 flights of stairs to get up a level in your house? Do you have kids that you need to carry around? All those kinds of things, so we can figure out, what do you really need? What are you going to benefit from the most? So
As we're I love it, all of it, by the way. And I'm probably gonna be reaching out more and more as more nutritional needs come around. Anyway,
sure, yeah,
if that's okay.
of
As
course.
as we shift, though, this is kind of a shift in focus from
Hmm.
cycling to strength. As I was just saying last night in the briefing, I really think it's important to focus on strength, and tried
Hmm.
to just give a brief idea of what that means. And hopefully everybody's taking that to heart. Should I be shifting the focus of my nutrition, of my daily diet, as my focus shifts from cycling to strength?
Yes, because you need more protein as opposed to more carbs.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I mean
That's
that's,
easy.
and it's, you don't need the, 1 pound per, one gram per pound of body weight. It's actually 1 gram per kilogram of body weight. So it's about half the amount that you will see people misquote a lot.
Right,
But yeah,
right.
when you're strength training a lot, you need to be eating more protein to help build those muscle fibers. Whereas, as we know, if you want to be able to sustain yourself, on the bike and doing the cardio, you need more carbs. So
Carbs.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We are okay to eat carbs for the most part. Healthy ones, healthy ones. Hey, I usually ask people about their obstacles and what gets in the way of your training,
Right.
but you've had a battle with anorexia, yes?
Yes, I was back in my 30s, and the reality is the seed was planted when I was like 8 years old. Nobody develops an eating disorder out of nowhere. It's a psychiatric disorder. And I was a competitive gymnast when I was young. I started when I was like 5 years old. And I can pretty much remember the moment when that shift happened in my brain. And it was when my coach was talking to a group of us, 8-year-old girls, about performance and about making sure that we were eating well and all of these kinds of things. And he happened to stop right next to me and he put his hand on my leg and he said, "You need to make sure that you all stay small so that you can move better. And so, the lighter you are, the easier it's going to be for you to pull off these tricks and do the flips and do all of these things." And he looked down at me and I looked down at my legs and he said, "You got to make sure, you don't want those legs to get too thick." And I mean, this was back in the, late 70s. So we won't even go to, talk about the history back then. But I suddenly internalized it as if he was looking at me and basically saying, "Your thighs are fat and you need to stop eating." And I didn't take action at that age, but it slowly sort of grew in my mind. And I was hyper aware of where my body was in space and what my body size was for the rest of my life. And once I became a teenager and started getting influenced by seeing photos of models and all that stuff, and my mother, rest her soul, was always, on a diet and complaining and picking herself apart in the mirror. And when you are dealing with something like gymnastics, where they really are, working you so hard and making sure that you are trying to be as fast as you can and move as, be as agile as you can and move as gracefully as you can, they do really stress staying small and sort of shrinking yourself. And that took a mental toll on me and a physical toll on me. And I was probably restricting my food more than I should have for years. But then in my 30s, I was dealing with a really heavy personal loss. And that was the end of it for me. It sort of felt like my world had been turned upside down. And at that point, the only thing that I could control was what I put into my body. And so I chose to control it so much to the point that I got extremely ill. And I almost died. I almost starved myself to death. I mean, I'm 5'5" and my lowest weight was like 85 pounds.
Oh, wow, Marjorie.
I was so sick and I couldn't see it because anorexia is a psychiatric disorder. And the problem is that it's all of these disordered eating patterns we see, and it's become a little more prevalent, I think, in terms of people being aware of it now, but it's very common among athletes, more female athletes than male, but men as well.
Yeah.
It's this obsession with your body has to look a certain way and you have to be a certain size and you have to be a certain shape in order to be the best you can be at what you do. And I even now, I still look at the U.S. women's gymnastics team and these Olympic athletes, and I mean, I can spot immediately when somebody is dealing with some sort of disordered eating situation because you can sort of recognize the pain if you've ever felt it. So for me, ironically, people hear, oh, anorexia or bulimia or an eating disorder, and they think it's about food, and it's not. It's about control. It's about trying to maintain some sort of control, whether it's of your body, of your life, of the world. So the way that I got healthy was when I finally went into recovery and therapy was to learn how to let go, how to learn how to be okay with not always having 100% control over everything. And that is a work in progress. And I will be fighting that battle for the rest of my life because I'm a control freak, but I'm very type A. But what really saved me was rediscovering my love for food. And that was when I really started diving back into my passion of the actual preparation of it and the joy of it and witnessing the joy of other people when they were eating something that I made that they loved. And that really healed me to realize that it was actually a, a beautiful thing and a positive thing for people to be nourishing themselves as opposed to denying themselves the nourishment. But
Oh,
I
that's
think
amazing.
it's important for athletes to realize that, you can't obsess all the time about the calories and the number of carbs that are in your recovery, drink or your electrolyte solution and all that. I mean, I get a little obsessive about it sometimes still, and I will check myself when I realize that I am, but it's what fun is life if you can't, go have your like Lindy Lou, like Linda Marie, our teammate loves
Yeah.
to say, she runs for 5K so she can have her French toast. And there's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that, and there was a time in
No.
my life when I thought there was something wrong with that and that would make me weak. And now I'm sort of like, no, but this is, we got to find the balance and the joy. I mean, why are we
Well,
doing this if it's not to have fun?
it sounds like here in your 50s, you've landed at the balance and the joy, and that's what a
Yeah,
journey. What a
it took,
journey.
yeah, it took a long time, but
I
I'm
think you
grateful to be
also
here.
mentioned, I think you mentioned in our text also that you count your injuries and your illnesses. It's all part of the journey, isn't it?
It
It's not
is.
like something, a setback. You keep moving forward, don't you? And you learn from each
You
of
do.
those.
And I've had people say to me before, when they're shocked that I'm so willing to share my history and talk about my eating disorder and everything that I've been through. And I say, well, it's because I am the person that I am now because I experienced all these things. And I really like who I am now. So why wouldn't I want to talk about it? Because these are the trials and tribulations that I had to face and the obstacles that I had to overcome to become this person I am who now owns the space that she takes up in the world. And appreciates that I am here to do that and to impact other people and to maybe help people who are going through similar journeys. And maybe they don't have to hit rock bottom the way I did because they have somebody like me who is willing to help them through it. So, yeah, I mean, I'm really happy with who I am and I'm happy with my life. And it was not that way for most of my life when I was younger. So it's, there's something to be said for being able to come out the other side. And all of my injuries, same thing. I had a horribly herniated disc in my neck, and the disc herniated itself into the nerve root canal on my dominant side. So it was crushing
Oh,
all the nerves that feed my right arm, my right shoulder. I couldn't move. I was just in excruciating pain. And obviously they had to go in and remove the disc and fuse the vertebrae and all that. And it was the first 4 weeks I wasn't allowed to turn my head and I couldn't do anything besides walk. And they said to me, you can't lift anything. You can't even lift 5 pounds. You're not allowed to lift anything. You're not allowed to turn your head. You can walk though. The day after surgery, I was on that freaking treadmill and I
yeah.
was walking really slowly and I was building up. And, by the end of the 4 weeks, I was logging 6, 8 miles a day because I couldn't work, obviously. So I was just walking on the treadmill. And I went in for my scans, my follow up scans after 4 weeks. And they looked at them and they said, we have never seen such diffuse and, and rapid bone growth in a new
Nice.
fusion in a patient. And I said, it's all the walking. I said, it's the weight bearing
Yeah.
exercise.
Yeah.
So, all of these, these things will make us stronger if we allow them to. We have to be willing to just go through the process. And speaking of that weight bearing exercise, one thing that I did want to touch on, and this was in your little notes from the pre interview, being in my 50s and being in menopause, I focus even more now on strength because it's so important for us as we get older to maintain our strength. And especially being cyclists, I think that people on the bike, they love the cardio aspect of it and they tend not to think about how important it is to do the weight bearing exercise that's going to help us maintain that bone density. And you see it in the posture of long-term cyclists and the way they're hunched over and things. And a lot of that can be prevented if you're focusing a little more on making sure you're actually loading your body weight with heavy things. Pick up heavy things and put them down. That's what it is at the end of the day. So for me, it's really a lot more now these days about strength training, which not only keeps me healthy and keeps my bones strong, but makes me a better cyclist too, because it makes you stronger. It gives you more power. So
Thank you for touching
yeah.
on that. Like, I mean, that's been my preach for the past couple weeks, and will be for the rest of the winter. Is you've got to do the strength. You've got to do the strength. You've got to do the
Yes.
strength, and it's
Yes.
just going to help prolong your health into your older years. And
Absolutely.
yeah, you mentioned menopause. Is there something specific to when you're of that age as a female that you need to keep doing strength training?
Yes, because as your hormones your hormone levels start to decline, you start to lose muscle mass and bone density. So the only way to fight back without necessarily having to take supplements and hormone replacement therapy all the time is to hit the gym and lift heavy things.
That's it. Lift
And
everything.
there,
I
yeah,
love it.
yeah, lift heavy things. I mean, pick them up and put them down. I mean, that's really what it is. So, yeah,
So
and that's
just
why I've
personally,
studied.
what's going on here? My wife, and I've told everybody, is a breast cancer survivor. She's 50
Oh,
years old and now in menopause because of the treatments and everything. But yeah,
uh-huh,
she's going to
uh-huh.
going to the gym here in Vermont. She's got a trainer because you can't train your spouse. Just
Yeah.
don't do that. But she loves it. She loves it,
Yeah.
and
No, and she's better off for it. I mean, obviously, I know
yeah,
because she's a cancer survivor, she can't take the hormone replacement therapy, and I personally can't because I am very high risk for breast cancer. So
yeah.
that's, we find other ways, and that's the best way to do it is get into the gym and lift heavy weights. Don't just lift weights. I mean, I see these people who are talking, oh, I want to tone and I want to sculpt, and they got the 2 pound dumbbells, and I'm like, please put that down and pick up a 15 or a 20, and then let's talk. Like, let's really, build some
Put
muscle
some
here. So
strain on and bone too, and
yeah,
your bones get stronger
yep,
with lifting heavy things, not just your
yeah.
muscles. And it's not about bodybuilding; it's about being strong so that you can
Yeah,
handle the impact of stepping off a curb or jumping out of the way, or just whatever
exactly.
dynamic movement when it comes up. So I'm so glad
Exactly.
you touched on that. I'm
Yeah.
still cringing though. I just did want to come back to that coach when you were a little girl. My
Yeah,
daughter
I
is
know.
7, and I am just cringing at the thought of anybody doing that. But that's what was out there in the 70s, and
Yeah,
maybe even now too. Hopefully we've come a
it
long
is.
way and are more educated. But you have to be so careful with your words that you use with children, but with athletes of all ages. So,
Yes,
uh,
yes. And that's also the thing that concerns me, because we do get so wrapped up in the numbers with cycling and with power zone and all that and your power to weight ratio. And that's why I like to tell people it's really more important that you get stronger as opposed to getting lighter.
yeah.
Because people are like, "Oh, how can I improve my power to weight ratio?" Yes, you can lose weight, but you also should be focusing on actually getting stronger instead. You want to increase your power instead of decreasing your weight. Because it's too easy to fall into that trap of, oh, look, my power to weight ratio went up because I lost 5 pounds or 10 pounds. But did you need to lose that weight, or did you just try to lose weight and starve yourself because you wanted a higher power to weight ratio? So
That's the first
yeah,
question, isn't it? Yeah, lose weight if you have it to lose, but
yes,
don't lose weight if you don't need to. And a lot of us are, if you're training, very likely you don't need to lose weight.
yeah, exactly.
Good. That's awesome. That's awesome. So much good stuff. I want to talk to you some more, but hey, do you have any
I'm around
questions for
anytime.
me?
I think my question for you is, what is your favorite part about coaching? Because I have my own thoughts about like what my favorite thing was about being a personal trainer and all that, but like, what's your favorite thing about coaching?
I've been saying lately that this is my favorite part, the athlete spotlight weekly, just to
Yeah.
get to know everybody. But you know what I really like is to help somebody achieve their goals. The feeling that somebody gets after they've done the charity ride or the race or even just raised their FTP. When I get the text or the phone call or something that says how good I feel, and I've been a little part of it. They're doing the work and they're doing it, but to be able to just be a part of that journey is so fun for me, and that keeps me going.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I am incredibly blessed to be a part of that a lot of times, and to be able to work from home and still be able to do it. This is just, it's been great.
I would love that anytime.
Well, did we cover everything or anything else you want to touch on?
I think we covered everything. I mean, I just want to say how grateful I am for the team. Like I said, this particular challenge that's just wrapping up was the first one. I just joined Team Wilpers. I
Oh
was
man,
aware of Team Wilpers, but most of my friends were doing Team Wilpers running.
right.
So and I was doing all the Power Zone pack challenges, so I never really made the jump over to the Team Wilper cycling, and it's a wonderful community. And I mean, and I
Good.
should have known that it was, but I sort of, to see it and to see how supportive everybody is of each other, and to be, noticing the same voices popping up on a lot of these threads and getting to know each other as we're all talking and sharing our experiences. It's just another, another benefit to this training, just to have another community, and another family to share this with, and I'm very grateful, and I'm grateful to all of you who keep things running and keep the posts going and the conversations going.